Hello, everyone. Welcome to our final session of Photoshop. I am so excited for you all for this to finish up this course. Let's go ahead and start the video. Hello, and so I just want to congratulate you all on the fantastic work that you have done. There we are. We have a phenomenal group of students, so thank you so much for all the hard work that you've put into these last 4 weeks, and it's really showing in your grades. I'm really excited to see so many A's in the class, and not only a lot of A's, but I'm really excited to see a lot of really high quality work that I know is going to help you get a career as a graphic artist. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And this final week that we're going into is going to be a relatively easy week. This is your chance to synthesize the skills that you have learned during the last 4 weeks and create a project. And really the sky is the limit as far as what you can do with this project. It's going to be a poster of some sort, about a social, political, or environmental issue of your choosing. So it's your chance to make your own social issue campaign, which is going to be a great addition to your portfolio. And as you're making it, really think about that future employer. Think about who you want to hire you in the future. Maybe think about the company that you want to work for. Maybe think about the type of work that you want to do as a graphic designer. And make a final project that is going to be not only something that's going to get you an A in the class, but something that you can feel proud of and that you can include in your final, in your employment portfolio, and hopefully be something that will enable you to, get a job when you graduate. So without further ado, I thought we kind of jump into what we're going to talk about today. Oh, just before I get into the assignment and what we have to do this week, I just want to stress how important Saturday is. Okay, Saturday, midnight Mountain Time, that is a hard deadline. Okay. Meaning that if you're in the middle of uploading your final assignment at, say, 11 p.m. On Saturday, and your internet connection's slow and it's taking a long time and it ends up taking longer than midnight, you will get kicked out of the classroom at midnight and you will not be able to continue submitting your assignment. And this can lead to a lot of tragic situations, which have happened to students before. I can think of 1 or 2 occasions where, I had a student who had an A in the class, as many of you have A's in the class. And that student, got busy during week 4 and didn't really get started on the week 4 assignment until Saturday. And then as she was uploading, she waited until the evening to begin uploading her assignment. And as she was uploading her assignment, she had internet connectivity issues. And so it was a large file, so it was taking a long time to upload. And that midnight rolled around and she got booted out of the classroom, and she lost out on 185 points. That's what this final assignment is worth, 185 points. And 185 points, you guys, is the difference between an A and a C, okay? So, many of you guys have A's. You don't want to see your A grade drop down to a C, right? Ugh. So do what you have to do to get this week's assignment turned in early. In fact, after watching our class session tonight, what I want to encourage you guys to do is, on Wednesday, get started on this assignment. And you'll see that this assignment doesn't take you very long. This is something that you could do in about 10 minutes. So get started on this assignment after watching this class session. Come to my multi-session. I'm going to have a multi-session on Wednesday, tomorrow. I'm going to have a multi-session on Thursday. So you can come in and you can get one-on-one help and feedback on your assignments before you turn it in. So you can turn in your assignments knowing that you're going to get an A on them, okay? And get this assignment turned in on Thursday or Friday. Don't wait until Saturday to start uploading it, because you never know. You might have computer issues. You might have personal issues in your life that come up at the last minute. And that hard Saturday deadline is something that really needs to be taken seriously, okay? Because again, that's the difference between an A and a C. And if you are, if you're one of the students who has below an A, maybe you have a B, that's now the difference between a B and a D. And a D is not a passing grade. So please do get that assignment turned in. And now, speaking of grades, again, I'm just so proud of you all for doing such phenomenal work and turning your assignments in on time and following directions and all of that. I want to, though, give everyone the chance to come out of their first design class with the grade that you want. We're graphic designers, we're perfectionists. We hate to see, we hate to see like a B instead of an A. We hate to see like a 99 instead of 100. So if you would like to resubmit any of your assignments so that you can increase your score, I am more than happy to allow you to revise and resubmit an assignment for a higher score. So if you go into our classroom and then you go into the announcement section of the classroom, you'll see this announcement that I just put up that says, got a less than perfect score on an assignment, resubmit for a better grade. So click on that. And you'll see here that I have copied and pasted all the videos that I've made for the past 3 weeks of the class that go step by step through how to do each of your assignments. So if you want to redo and resubmit the week 1 assignment, you can go ahead and watch that there. Same for the week 2 assignment. You can go ahead and watch that little how-to video there. The week 2 assessment, remember, which was the text on a path. And you guys probably found that was a really easy assignment that you were able to do pretty quickly. But I would say the only reason that someone might have earned a lowish score on that assignment or the week 2 assessment was because they forgot to make their text on a path curve. So just be sure to watch if you want to resubmit your week 2 assessment because you got a less than perfect score on it. Watch this video. Watch how you can make the path curve. And then, resubmit your assignment. And here's, again, our video on how to do the week 3 assignment, okay? Now, let's talk about what is going on this week. So 2 important things. Week 4 is such an easy week. I think you guys are going to be able to do everything that you need to do for this week in about 20 minutes. Seriously. So if you go to week 4 here, and what you have is your assessment, which is what we're going to spend the majority of class time this week talking about. You're going to be making a poster, and it needs to be for a social, political, or environmental issue. So no movie posters, no posters for music concerts, no posters advertising a product. Think of like the ad council, and I'll go into the ad council a little bit. Think of a social issue poster, such as bullying. Make a poster against bullying. Make a poster for recycling, or for homelessness, or stopping child abuse. You're not making an advertisement for a thing or a service. You are advertising a larger kind of social problem. So there's going to be 2 files that are required for this assignment, a PDF. Notice I said PDF, not PSD, and also a JPEG. Those are the 2 files that you're going to be submitting this week. And don't worry, I'm going to go more in depth into this in just a little bit. Another really important thing, which you guys can do now, and will take you all of 3 minutes of your life, is this week 4 career integration quiz. And this is not a quiz that you have to study for. This quiz is at the end of pretty much all of your classes. And you have these 3 questions. And you are going to answer these 3 questions in your own words. You know, this is your own opinion here. But what we're looking for is, you know, your responses need to be grammatically correct. You know, so capital I's if you're talking about yourself, use periods and commas and all of that. Spell your words correctly. And you'll answer these 3 questions. You don't have to study for them, and you will instantly get 15 points. It is the easiest 15 points you will ever get in your life, okay? And it will take you all of 3 minutes to do. So do that week 4 career integration quiz right away, as soon as possible, because that's easy, get it done, right? Okay, so let's go back to our week 4 assessment. And I really, really, really want all of you to pay attention to this rubric. This is how you are going to be graded on your week 4 assessment. And the main reason why students end up getting a low grade on this final assessment, even though it's totally easy, is that they don't pay attention to the rubric. You'll see here, it requires a PDF to be submitted. And if you don't turn in a PDF, if you turn in a PSD file, or if you turn in a PDF that doesn't have a .pdf file extension, you will lose out on those 20 points. If you don't submit a JPEG and you don't resize that JPEG to 500 pixels on its shortest side, you will lose out on 25 points. And so, you know, there's been 1 or 2 students in the past, you know, keep in mind I've taught this course for 8 years. There's been 1 or 2 students who weren't closely paying attention to this rubric and who and who turned in a .psd file, and those students lost out on 45 points, okay? Now keep in mind, this rubric also says 3 photographic elements used. That means 3 photos, okay? And what's a photo? A photo is an image that is created with a camera. An illustration is not a photo. A piece of clip art is not a photo. A drawing is not a photo. A graphic is not a photo. A 3D rendering is not a photo. A photo is something that is taken with a camera. So if you make a beautiful poster, but you only use illustrations, or you only use clip art, or you only use 3D renderings, and you don't use photos, you're going to lose out on 20 points right there, okay? So make sure you submit the right file types. Make sure that you use 3 photo elements in your poster. And then 2 other really important areas are design quality and professionalism. So think back to week 1. Remember how we talked about using high quality, high resolution images? This is something that you're going to really want to pay attention to when making your poster. If you use small photos and then stretch them to make them bigger, they're going to get blurry and pixelated, and you're going to lose points for design quality. Same with if you have a very cluttered design. If you put text over photos and it's hard to read. If you use fontitis, which means you have a bunch of different fonts in one design, you're going to lose points for design quality. If you don't use alignment, if you don't use contrast, if you don't use those basic rules of design, you're going to lose points for design quality. And then professionalism. Professionalism means spelling things correctly, okay? So if you have spelling and grammatical mistakes in your design, you will lose, look at that, 50 points for professionalism. No spelling or grammar mistakes, okay? Another reason why students lose those 50 points for professionalism is if they use copyright protected imagery. So remember, we talked a lot about copyright protected imagery in week 1 and in week 3. So if you use copyright protected imagery, imagery that has a watermark on it, imagery that you don't have permission to use, you will lose those 50 points for professionalism. So let's talk first about downloading images for our project using the correct procedure so we make sure that we don't lose points for professionalism, okay? So I'm gonna go to File, New tab, and I'm gonna go on Google, and we need to find a photo. We need to find an image to use for our project. So I'm gonna look for a zebra, and you're gonna go to images, right? But now when we go to these images, we don't know which of these images we have permission to use and which ones we don't. So this is a really good opportunity here where you're gonna want to write down notes so that you write down and you have written down in your notes the correct procedure for downloading these images. So first thing is we're gonna go to Tools, and then we're gonna go to Usage Rights, and we're gonna click Labeled for Reuse with Modification. Labeled for Reuse with Modification. And Labeled for Reuse with Modification is going to give us images that we have permission to use. Next, we're making a large poster, a large high-resolution poster that's going to be 300 DPI. So we need to make sure that we use large, high-resolution images. So I'm gonna go over here to Size, and I'm gonna click on Large. So now only the large images are showing. Now remember how I talked about photographic elements? So let's say I wanted to use this image here. Remember how 3 photographic elements are required for a poster? If I use this image for my poster and then I use 2 photos, would that count as 3 photographic elements? No, right? Because this is an illustration. And an illustration does not count as a photo element. Now, let's find a nice high-resolution image to use for our poster. And this one is good because we can see the animal's whole body, right? And it says it's 4,000 by 2,000 pixels, so that's a nice large high-resolution size. If I go Control-click, Save Image As, is that the correct way to download this photo? No. Because if I Control-click and Save Image As, I'm downloading the small thumbnail image. Now, what about if I go here, if I go Control-click, Save Image As? I'm downloading the preview image. It is too small. I need to click on View Image. I need to view the image nice and large. See how big this is? And then, and only then, is it big enough to download. And now I can Control-click, Save Image As, and then I'll save this as zebra.jpg. Cool. So this is the procedure for downloading images for your poster. You're going to go to Google Images. And you're going to go to Tools. Write this down if you don't have it written down already. You're going to go to Usage Rights, labeled for reuse with modification. Labeled for reuse with modification. Then you're going to go to Size, and then you're going to click on Large. And you're going to find a nice, large, high-resolution image. You're going to click on it. You're going to view the image as large as possible. And then only when it's nice and big do you control click and then save image as. Like that. Cool. Alrighty, now let's go into Photoshop and let's walk step by step through how to do this assignment. Now, the main panels that you're going to need for this project are your tool panel and your layer panel. And if for whatever reason, when you open up Photoshop, you don't see your tool panel and your layer panel, you can go to Window up at the top of the screen and then scroll down to Tools, and see when you uncheck Tools, Tools is gone. And then when you go to Window, Tools, and there is Tools. That's how you bring back windows that may have gotten hidden or gotten removed from your workspace. Same for layers. You can go up to Window, and then if your layers are gone, you can go to Window, and then you can go to Layers and click on it, and then your layers are back, okay? And so this is what you're going to need for the project. Now let's make our canvas the right size. So I'm going to go to File, New. And the size that we're making this is going to be in inches. So make sure that you change that pixels to inches. So it needs to say inches, not pixels. And be sure to be writing this down, okay? So you could go step 1, change the sizes to inches. Step 2, and then write this down. You're going to make the width 11 inches and the height 17 inches. And the resolution is going to be 300. Okay, so that's different than what we've been using previously. And our color mode, again, we're changing our color mode now because we're making a poster. RGB is great for the screen, but if you're making something for print, you're going to use CMYK. So be sure to write this down. Step 3, write this down. Color mode, change it to CMYK. And I'm going to leave this little window here up on the screen so you can see it. You know, and if you want to take a screenshot of it, you can go to Shift-Command-4 and take a little screenshot. You can write down in your notes all of these, and then you're going to click OK. Hi, Amber, do you have a question? What's your question? Oh, can I unmute you? Yeah, sure, you can be unmuted.
Mesh. Sorry I'm late. I had to actually talk to my marketing teacher because I guess I missed her class because the holidays got me mixed up.
Okay.
I am going to end up having to watch your recording because my son just got a haircut and there's hair everywhere. Yeah,
no problem at all. Feel free, after you watch the recording, feel free to email me if you have any questions.
Okay, I will tune into class as much as I can, but just to be on the safe side so I can understand what I missed and everything, I will watch your recording. It's going to be through YouTube, right?
Oh yeah, all the recordings for all of your classes are always posted on YouTube.
Okay, thank you, Carly.
No problem. Alrighty, so I'm going to show you first how not to make your poster, and then I'll show you how to make your poster good, okay? Now, this is something that I see students do from time to time. They'll be like, okay, so I have a blank canvas, I'll get out my gradient, and I'll get kind of an interesting, pretty gradient, And I'll put that in for the background, and then now I have to put in my 3 pictures. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and remember I got my capybara, so I'll put that in there, and I'll go Place, and I'll shrink him down, and I'll put him over there, and then I'll File, Place Embedded, and I'll go to my zebra picture, and I'll put him in there, and I'll shrink him down, and then I'll go to File, Place Embedded, and let's see if I have a bunny. There we go. And that bunny was small, so I'll put him there. And then I gotta put my text on here, so I'll write, be kind to animals. All right, if I turn this in, am I gonna get a good grade on my assignment? No. Okay, so what are some of the mistakes that I did on this assignment? Okay, so it's all over the place. No thought has been put into the design. Did I make any mistakes when I was resizing the images? And what mistake might have I made when I was resizing the image? I stretched them. And I didn't hold down the shift button and resize from the corner. I just resized them, and now they're all distorted. Some of them are squished, some of them are just tall. And then the bunny image was low resolution. So when I zoom in, you can see how blurry and pixelated the bunny looks, right? Because that was a low resolution image. Now, what about the text? The text is hard to read because it's a dark color against a gradient background. And having a gradient background on a poster is just never a good idea because it makes the text so hard to read. But you really, when you're using text, you want to make sure that you have text that is either significantly lighter than the background or significantly darker than the background. Okay, so let's start over. And let's start with a nice plain white background. Now, if you are choosing a background color for a poster, I would recommend choosing either a color that is way up here in this quadrant here, right? So let's say I were to choose like right here. Oops, right here. See, it's a super, super light pink color. And that way, with that super, super light pink color, I can use a super, super dark color down here. And regardless of what color I choose, it's always going to be easy to read against the background, okay? Now, let's say I were to change the background color and use a dark color for the background. This time I'll choose a super dark, dark blue from way down here on the color picker. Then I would choose a super, super light color for the text. So instead of choosing something from the middle, I'm going to choose something from way, way, way up here. And see, dark background, light text, easy to read. Unfortunately, some students, when they think about contrast, instead of thinking about contrast in terms of value, in terms of lightness or darkness, students think of contrast in terms of color. So students will sometimes choose a color from the middle of the color picker. And the problem is, if they choose a background color that's in the middle of the color picker and a text color that's in the middle of the color picker, you end up with colors that are very close together in terms of value, and thus very, very, very hard to read, okay? So the moral of that story is, do not choose background colors from the middle of the color picker. Choose background colors from either the very, very top or the very, very bottom of the color picker. And then choose text that is on the opposite end of the color picker. See, nice and easy to read. Okay, next, let's talk about layout. So instead of just placing our photos wherever we feel like on a design, we're gonna have a structure to our design, and we're gonna have a reason for placing things the way that they're placed. Also, we're not just gonna take square, rectangle shaped photos and place them on our document and call it good. We're gonna use masking, which is an important skill that we learned in week 3 and that we need to use in all of our design projects from now on. So first things first is I wanna create a nice layout, and Photoshop comes with a grid and a guide that makes this very easy. Okay, so step 1, on your document, you need to make sure that you can see your ruler. And your ruler can come up by hitting Command R if you're on a Mac, or Control R if you're on a PC. So see there, my ruler is gone, my ruler is back. And here is my ruler at the top and at the sides here. Now the ruler is very handy because if you click on it and then drag, you can bring out these handy guidelines. And what I'm doing here with these guidelines is I'm making a 1/2 inch margin around my document so that all of my text and my image elements are going to be inside that 1/2 inch guideline. Why? Because when a design goes to print, very often that 1/2 inch that's around a document gets cut off by the printer. So it's really, really important that all your important text and images stay within those borders. Next, I need to find the exact center of my document. And I'm going to use Photoshop's guides to do this. The guides come up if you hit Command apostrophe on your keyboard. Write that down. If you're on a PC, it's going to be Control apostrophe. And if you're on a Mac, it's going to be Command apostrophe. Now, my guides probably look different from your guides. That's because I've customized them. So if I go over here to Photoshop, up at the top of the screen, and I click on Preferences, I can go to Guides, Grid, and Slices. Oh, someone raised a hand. Emmanuel, did you have a question? Go ahead and post your question in the chat. Did you have a question, Emmanuel? Okay, when you have that question, go ahead and post it in the chat. And so what I've done is I've made a grid line. So if you go to your grid here, I've made a grid line every 50%. I think by default on Photoshop, your grid lines are set up to every inch. So your grid will probably look something like this. But I want to find the exact center of my document. So I'm going to go to Photoshop, Preferences, Guides, Grid, and Slices. And instead of inches, see where it says inches right here? Instead of inches, I'm going to change it to percent. And I'm going to make a grid line every 50%. And that way I can find the exact center of my document. And see right there, it's made in a perfect X marks the spot. Emmanuel, no, you don't have to put lines on your poster. And you don't, the lines aren't on your layers. These lines are imaginary lines. They're not real lines. These lines are guides for you to lay out your image elements on your poster. These are absolutely not required. This is just a way that I think is going to make it easier for some of you to figure out where you're going to place your photo elements on your poster by making guidelines. But guidelines are not required. And really important, guidelines are not a permanent part of your document. They are imaginary and they're just there to help guide you. So when you save this as a JPEG or a PDF or print, these guidelines are not going to be on your document. So now I want to make a nice little guide where that center is. So I'm going to go to my ruler and click and drag my line directly onto there, and I'm going to click and drag my line directly onto there. So now I don't need my guide anymore because I have my grid, so I can command apostrophe and make my grid go away. Now you might be noticing that my guides and grids are different colors than your guides and grids. You can change the colors by going up to Photoshop, Preferences, Guides, Grid, and Slices. And so now, right now my guides are kind of like this dark magenta color. I can easily change it to like a cyan color. And there you go. And it's, it's up to your personal taste as far as what color you choose. It's whatever's easiest for you. Okay, now I'm going to place an image element directly on the center of the document. So I'm going to use a tool that we learned about in week 1, which is our custom shape tool. And I need to make sure that my custom shape tool is a color that is different from the color of my background. So I'm going to swap my foreground and background colors just by hitting X on my keyboard or clicking the switch foreground and background colors icon, which is a little curvy arrow here. And then I have, remember, 3 options available at the top of the screen. I have shape, path, and pixels. And I'm going to use the shape option. And I'm going to use the shape option to draw a little heart shape, right? And now watch this. I'm going to hold down the Shift button as I click and drag diagonally across the document. And now my heart wasn't placed directly in the center. So I'm going to use my Move tool. And remember what the shortcut key is for the Move tool? It's the letter V. V for Move. And I'm going to click on my heart and move it right into the center of my document there. Okay, and I'm going to use this heart as a clipping mask for my photo elements. So I'm going to put all my photo elements inside this heart. So they'll be masked and they won't just be boring squares floating around, okay? So now let's bring our photo elements in. I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and I'll bring in, let's see, our fox. And I'm going to clip him inside of the heart, okay, by moving his image into place. And now I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option button, and then I'm going to go over to my layers. Definitely write down all these steps. Alt or Option, and I'm going to go over to my layers, and I'm going to click on the line between the Fox layer and Shape 1. So I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option button on my keyboard, and I'm going to click on the line between the Fox layer and Shape 1. And ta-da! The reason it didn't work is because I forgot to place my image. So first you have to hit Enter or Return to place the image. Then you hold down the Alt or Option button and click on the line between the Fox and the shape. There we go. Now I'm going to bring in another photo element. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded. There we go. Place. And now I'm going to shrink him down a little bit. So I'm going to hold down the Shift button and then click on the corner, shrink him down so he fits nicely inside the heart. Move him approximately into place. And then I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option. First I'm going to hit Enter or Return. Enter or Return. Then I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option button. And I'm going to click on the line between the zebra and the fox. Now, my zebra picture is slightly overlapping my fox picture. So I need to make a mask so that I can erase part of the zebra picture so that you can see the fox underneath. So I'm going to click on my zebra layer. We know that it's clicked because it's blue. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom of the layer panel and click on the square that has a circle inside of it. The square that has a circle inside of it. That has now created that stencil next to the zebra layer that's going to enable me to mask or erase part of the zebra layer. I'm going to select my brush tool, and I need to have black as my foreground color in order to erase. So this is going to be a few steps. So write this down. Write this down. Step 1, I'm going to hit D on my keyboard. That resets the default colors to black and white. Then I'm going to hit X on my keyboard. That swaps. So now black is my foreground color. That's what I need. And now I'm going to select my brush tool, which is B, the letter B for brush. B for brush. Now I'm going to go up to the brush panel up at the top of the screen. And then I'm going to lower my brush hardness so my brush is nice and soft. And I'm going to increase my brush size. Let's see. Nice big brush size. And now watch, everywhere I paint, see I'm blending now the two pictures together. Isn't that nice? Now I can see both the fox and the zebra. That's because I made a mask, which is what we learned about in week 3, Option click. And see, this is like a stencil that allows me to erase part of the photo. Now I'm going to place a third photo in. I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded. Do I have a flamingo? That's a dog with a flamingo. A fox. How about this guy? I like this guy. He's facing forward a little bit more. I'm going to hit Place. Alrighty, now I'm going to shrink him down. So I'm going to hold down the Shift button, and I'm going to click on the corner and click and drag and shrink him down. I'm going to place him over the heart and then hit Enter or Return. Now I want to clip this photo inside the heart shape. So I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option button and then click on the line between the capybara and the zebra. I need to reposition him so that his mouth isn't cut off. So I'm going to hit the letter V, V as in Victor on my keyboard, and that's the Move tool. So write that down, the letter V is the Move tool. And I'm going to click and drag like so. There we go. Something about there is good. And now I need to make a layer mask on that layer. So I'm going to click the Add a Layer Mask icon, which is the square with the circle inside of it. Then I'm going to go to my brush tool. Remember, B for brush. Make sure black is your foreground color. Make sure your layer mask is selected so you see the little brackets that are around the layer mask. Make sure you see those brackets so that they're selected. And then click and paint, 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 paint. And see now what I've done? Everything that I painted black, I've erased from the photo. And so I've created a nice blend. Now I want to put text on here, but I want my text to have alignment. I want my text to line up with my photo, with my heart shape. Okay? So I'm going to go to my ruler here. And I'm going to click and drag this line right to the edge of the heart. So I'm creating another guideline. And I'm going to click and drag this ruler, and I'm going to click and drag this line to the other side of the heart. And now this is going to create a nice guide for my text. So I'm going to make a new layer, Shift Command N. I'm going to go to my text tool, and I want a nice large font that's going to be appropriate for a poster. So I'm going to go to Impact, which is a nice big sans serif font. It's a very good font for a poster. And I'm going to click right on this line. And then as I resize this text, I'm going to make this text line up with the lines. So remember, our shortcut key to resize something is Command T to bring up the transform controls. I'm going to go back to my Move tool really quick, the Move tool over here in your tool panel first. And then I'm going to hit Command T, or Control T if you're on a PC. I'm going to hold down the Shift button, and I'm going to click and drag at a diagonal angle. And see now what I've done. I've made, try and get a little bit closer, hold down the Shift button. Yes, you can use any font in your text, but you want to make sure that it's nice and big and easy to read for a poster. Now see how the letter B is lining up now with the edge of the heart, and the letter D is lining up with the edge of the heart here. Just got to make it just a little bit bigger. Enter or return to place. And that is alignment. That's what makes your design look like it's been put there for a reason instead of just put there randomly. And I'm going to make another text layer. So I'm going to hit Shift Command N to make a new layer. And I'm going to get my text tool out again, and I'm going to click on this line here that I made. Now I'm going to go to my Move tool, which is this little arrow here. I'm going to hit Command T, and I'm going to hold down the Shift button and click and drag at a diagonal angle while holding down the Shift button. And see now I'm getting that S to touch that guideline there. Enter or return to place. And make sure that S is right. See how that S is right on that line there? And see how that T for 2 is right on that line there. And so we've created alignment. The B lines up with the edge of the heart and lines up with the T in 2, and the S lines up with the edge of the heart and lines up with the D in kind. And so we have alignment at work here. And that alignment helps to create a structure for our design. So now I'm going to make another layer, Shift Command N. And now I'm going to put a website URL at the bottom. But I don't want the website URL to be as thick and high contrast as the tagline or the slogan. I want it to be secondary. So I'm going to use a smaller, thinner font. I think I'm going to use Helvetica New Ultralight. And instead of being aligned to the left, I'm going to use center alignment, so I can click directly on the center line here and start typing. And I'm just going to make up a fictional website URL, bekind.org. And so see here how Emmanuel. So Emmanuel asks if you were to do a poster about work. So it needs to be either a social, political, or environmental issue. So it could be a poster about there needs to be more jobs created. It could be a poster about the importance of hard work. But it can't be a poster for a product or a company, if that makes sense. So think of a slogan for whatever it is, the cause that you're trying to advertise. Now, so notice how the letters in Be Kind to Animals are thick and dark, and the letters for the website URL that I just made up, you are totally welcome to just make up a website URL. And now we also have fulfilled the requirements of the assignment, which was 3 distinct areas of text. And here I have 3 distinct areas of text. So now I'm worried a little bit that the Be Kind is a little bit too dark and it's competing with the focal point. So I'm just going to go over here to the layer panel and I'm going to lower the opacity. I'm lowering the opacity so that it doesn't compete with the slogan here. And Emmanuel, that's great. So think about making a slogan that says something like "Vote for more jobs. We need more jobs to survive," or elect politicians that advocate for more jobs. Something like that. But that sounds like a great premise for a project. Okay, so we have successfully used alignment. We have successfully used our 3 photo elements, and we've come up with a slogan, and we have 3 distinct areas of text. So now we are ready to save this in the correct way so that you can earn full credit on your assignment. So first things first, you always want to save your .psd file, your Photoshop document. And this Photoshop document is not going to be turned in. This is for your own record. So we're going to go to File, Save As. And remember, we have made a folder on our desktop for our class, which is DES104 schoolwork. That is our folder with all of our schoolwork on it. And the file is going to be called DES104week4 assessment.psd. And again, we're not turning in that PSD. This is our PSD that we're going to save and back up for our capstone project. So Emmanuel, some things that you could use for a poster about the importance of jobs would be photos of money. You could show photos of people dressed in business clothes. photos of briefcases, photos of buildings, the American flag flapping in the wind. Cool. Now we're going to save the PDF that is the first required file type for this assignment. Okay, the first thing is we need to set up our document so that it's going to be easy to see in the gradebook. So we're going to rasterize all of our layers and we're going to merge our layers together. The shortcut key that we're going to use to merge our layers together without deleting our layers is, write this down guys, Shift Command Option E. Shift Command Option E. Notice it merged all of our layers together without deleting them. Next, we're going to rasterize our layers by going up to Layer. Be sure to write this down, guys. Layer, rasterize all layers. Layer, rasterize all layers. Next, we're going to go to File, Save As, and in the format here, we're going to select Photoshop PDF. Photoshop PDF. And this is very, very important. Pay attention to this next part. See where it says Save and it says Layers and there's a checkbox? Uncheck Layers. Uncheck Layers. And then hit Save. And then hit OK. And then see where it says Save Adobe PDF? You're going to select smallest file size from the drop-down menu. Smallest file size from the drop-down menu. And make sure Preserve Photoshop editing capabilities is not checked. Make sure Preserve Photoshop editing capabilities is not, and circle and underline the word not checked. And then hit Save PDF. Now we're going to save the JPEG. But remember, the JPEG has to be shrunk down to 500 pixels on its shortest side, and it also has to be converted to RGB. So be sure to write down all of these steps. This is very important. First things first, we're going to change it from CMYK to RGB by going to Image, Mode. See where it says CMYK right there? We're going to select RGB, RGB, Image, Mode, RGB. And now we're going to click Don't Flatten, Don't Flatten. Next, we're going to adjust the size. So I'm going to go to Image, Image Size. And the first step, see where it says Resolution 300? First step, very important. Where it says Resolution 300, you're going to change it to 72. 72. And see where it says Width 729? You're going to change it to 500. And you're going to make sure that little link is between the width and the height, because you'll see it automatically change the height to 773. And so your final width and height here should be 500 by 773. Okay? And now you're going to click OK. Now you may be thinking, oh wow, that looks really small. But watch this, Command plus sign, Command plus sign, Command plus sign, Command plus sign. We're now at 100%. It's actually not that small at all. It's a good size for a website. So now we're going to save the JPEG by going to File, Export, Save for Web. File, Export, Save for Web. And where it says GIF, we're going to change it to JPEG. JPEG high or JPEG medium is fine. Pay attention to the size over there. You know, your final size should be under 100 kilobytes. And make sure your image size is 500 pixels by 773 pixels. If you accidentally made your size 500 inches, you are going to be in trouble. It's going to be a huge file. It's going to take forever to upload. So make sure that's in pixels, not inches. Pixels, not inches. And now save. And now you have both a PDF and a JPEG for your file submission. But please, please, before you exit Photoshop with your project, I need you all to do one thing. It's really, really important. You need to undo this rasterized and resized stuff, because I would hate for you to save a PDF, PSD that is shrunk down 500 pixels on its shortest side. So do this. Option Command Z. Option Command Z undoes the size. Option Command Z again undoes the RGB mode. Option Command Z again undoes the rasterized layers. And Option Command Z again undoes the merged layers. And only when it is back in this format do you want to exit out of Photoshop, you know, save your project, exit out of Photoshop, because you don't want to accidentally save your native file format as a super, super small file size. Okay, that's depressing. Any questions on anything that I've gone over? I want to talk a little bit about fonts next. Any questions at all? Alrighty, so you may be wondering why I used impact in my poster. And you know, there's a lot of info out there on fonts and which fonts to use and fonts that pair well together and all of that. So I want to take a little bit of time to talk about fonts and what they are and why we use them and all of that sort of stuff. And there is this cute little video I want to show you that kind of goes over these fonts and where they come from and why we use them. So I'm going to show you that to you first, and then you'll kind of see why I use that sans serif font. So Arial, the reason that we rasterize the layers before making the PDF is so that you don't accidentally make a PDF that has some of your layers invisible. This happens if you have a PDF that you didn't rasterize your layers and you upload that PDF to the gradebook. I will not see your typography, for instance, and you'll lose points for not having any words in your poster. I might also not see your masks because they haven't been rasterized. So it's important to rasterize so that we can see your work in the gradebook. Okay, so let's go over some info on typography.
Type is power. The power to express words and ideas visually. It's timeless, but always changing. And that's what we're going to explore. Most people agree that the creator of typography was a German man named Johannes Gutenberg, and yes, he wore a hat like that. Before Gutenberg came along and revolutionized the world of communication, books needed to be scribed by hand, usually by monks, which was very time-consuming and expensive. So Gutenberg created blackletter, the first ever typeface, modeled after the writing of the scribes. Blackletter has thick vertical lines and thin horizontal connectors, which made it great for scribing, but it looked very dense and squished together when printed. Something needed to change. Enter Roman type. This particular typeface is Cambria, which you're probably used to seeing on your word processor, but the first ever Roman typeface was created in the 15th century by the Frenchman Nicolas Jenson. This is his typeface right here. Jenson worked mainly in Venice, Italy, and was inspired by the lettering found on ancient Roman buildings. His letter forms were based on straight lines and regular curves. This made them very clear and legible compared to the dense darkness of blackletter. This legible new typeface was an instant success, and quickly spread across Europe, riding on the coattails of the Renaissance. The next major innovation in typography after Roman letters was italics, which are like slanted and stylized versions of Roman type. They were created in the late 15th century by Aldus Manutius from Italy as a way of fitting more letters onto the page and saving money. Now we use italics interspersed in Roman type for emphasis. Aldus Manutius also created the modern comma and semicolon, but that's another story. Type development stayed fairly stagnant until the 18th century in England, when William Caslon created a typeface that set a new standard for legibility. While it wasn't anything radical, it was just what the world was looking for. The style of Caslon's typeface is now referred to as Old Style. A few decades later, another Brit named John Baskerville created a new variety of typeface, which we call transitional. Later still, a Frenchman named Didot and an Italian named Bodoni created typefaces that we have classified as modern. Most serif typefaces fit into one of these three categories, but what does each category mean? An old-style typeface has letters that have thick serifs and low contrast between thick and thin strokes. A transitional typeface has letters with thinner serifs and a higher contrast between thick and thin strokes. And a modern typeface has letters with very thin serifs and extreme contrast between thick and thin strokes. Next, William Caslon's great-grandson, named William Caslon IV, got sick of all of these serifs, so he decided to remove them entirely and made a new kind of typeface, called a sans serif. It didn't catch on immediately, but would eventually get really big. During the Second Industrial Revolution, advertising created a need for new typefaces. Letters were made taller and wider, mainly used in large sizes on posters and billboards. Things got pretty weird, but one happy result of all of this experimentation is Egyptian, or slab serif. It has really thick serifs and is usually used for titles. As a backlash to the complexity found in typefaces of the 19th century, the early 20th century brought something simple. Paul Renner from Germany created a typeface called Futura, and it was based on simple geometric shapes. This is called the geometric sans. Around the same time, a British man named Eric Gill created a typeface called Gill Sans that was similar to a geometric sans, but with gentler, more natural curves, and this is called a humanist sans. The next major step in the world of sans serifs happened in Switzerland in 1957 with the introduction of Helvetica. It has simple curves and is available in many different weights, and some would call it the world's favorite typeface. The world of typography changed forever with the introduction of the computer. There were a few difficult years of crude pixel type due to the primitive screen technology. But then technology evolved and computers began to allow for the creation of thousands of beautiful typefaces. And the odd dud. But now anyone has the freedom to create their own unique typeface. And that is the history of typography.
Alrighty, so as you can see from that video, a good typeface to use for a poster would be something that has a really, really thick, thick vertical lines, something sans serif, right? Because it's easy to read and good for a poster. Something that is high contrast. So think light background, dark text, or dark text, light, or dark background, light text. Alrighty. So we talked about a little bit about with this assignment different resolutions for screen and for print. So the reason that we're having you turn in that 72 DPI JPEG is because that is what you will be delivering to clients who ask for graphics, for web graphics, okay? You're going to be turning in graphics that are 72 DPI, and the color mode needs to be RGB, okay? If you're making something for print, it needs to be 300 DPI. So that's why that PDF that you're making for this poster is 300 DPI. And in a little bit, we're going to go over the 4 major principles of design. But I want to talk really quickly about inspiration for your posters. And I want to encourage you guys to visit the Ad Council. What is the Ad Council? You guys, I'm sure, have seen posters for the Ad Council, or made by the Ad Council, maybe on bus stops or billboards. The Ad Council is a company that's been around for a long, long time that does social issue campaigns. So if you go on Google and you do a search for Ad Council posters, and you can just go to Google Images, you can see a lot of really great examples. And if you're trying to come up with slogans, doing a search for Ad Council posters is a great way to come up with slogans. Right, so here's kind of an example. Nice, simple campaign. Notice the text is very dark. Notice the background is very, very light. And notice it's relatively simple, right? Another place to go for inspiration is Pinterest. I'm sure a lot of you guys already use Pinterest, but it's a great place to go for inspiration. So you can go on Pinterest and you can do a search for social issue campaigns. And you can see some more examples. Now, you're not going to copy these, but you can certainly use the slogans that you see on here, and you can certainly use the ideas behind these for your posters. Again, do not copy, do not plagiarize, but definitely use them as inspiration. Okay. Oh, you guys, I'm sorry. I thought I was showing you guys what I was looking at. But here you go. Here's an example of Pinterest, and I just did a search for social issue campaigns. And here are some examples of posters. And, you know, use these as inspiration for your slogans. But of course, do not plagiarize. Use these as inspiration. And then again, to look at Ad Council examples. These are some examples of posters that have been done by the Ad Council. Alrighty. Really important before I move on to the principles of design. Don't accidentally shrink your native file. That's why after you shrink your file size down to 72 DPI, and after you make it RGB mode, please, please undo. So Command Option Z, Option Command Z, Option Command Z, Option Command Z to undo the resizing. And so when you finally exit out of Photoshop and save your PSD, make sure that it's 300 dpi. It's nice and full res so that you can go back to it for your capstone class. So contrast. Contrast is, I think, the most important principle of design. Contrast ensures that things are easy to read. So using a nice large font, a nice large sans serif font that has a lot of value contrast between the text and the background is really important. So light text against a dark background. Dark text against a light background. Do not choose two colors that are close together in value, like this red and this medium blue, because it won't provide enough contrast. It will be hard to read. Repetition. So repetition is the idea that you use the same thing over and over and over again in your design. And a perfect example of that is my poster that I did. The repetition that I used was the font. So I didn't use one font for bee kind and a different font for two animals. I used the same font. I used, I put all of the animals inside of a heart shape. So I kept everything consistent, okay? You don't want to have like 3 different fonts on your design. You don't want to use a bunch of different colors. You want it all to feel cohesive. And so another great way to do repetition is to use a monochromatic color scheme. So see, right here I have repetition in terms of the font. But I can also use repetition in terms of the color by throwing on a hue saturation adjustment layer over my whole design, and then clicking colorize. And see, now my design is all monochromatic. Can even just increase the contrast a little bit. So now everything's, I'll make it blue like this. And that's repetition. The text is blue, the background's blue, and the heart is blue. It's repetition, and it makes things all feel nice and cohesive. Alignment. So in this example, on this slide here, you can see the alignment. The L in Helvetica is lining up with the lowercase I, right? The end of the E is lining up with the end of the A. The H is lining up with the H down here. So alignment. And in my poster, I used alignment. I can get rid of the grid. This is what it's going to look like as a JPEG or PDF without the grid. But with the grid, see, I used that grid. That's the grid I used, Command semicolon. I made sure that the B in Be Kind lined up with the edge of the heart and lined up with the T in Two Animals. And the D in Be Kind lines up with the edge of the heart and lines up with the S in Animals. Alignment. And then proximity, grouping things together. So you'll notice on my poster, I grouped things together. The slogan and the heart shape are grouped together. This is the focal point of the design. This is where I want you to look first. And then the website URL is by itself, very small, not competing down here. So we have, the elements grouped together and then one element alone by itself down there. So, it's clearly guiding you. Yes, you will lose points, Emmanuel, for design quality if your elements do not use alignment. Because alignment is one of the basic principles of design. You're going to definitely be expected to do it for all of your assignments. So a good strategy for success with your poster this week is use guides and grids. Think about symmetrical or asymmetrical balance. So symmetrical and asymmetrical balance. Right now, my poster is symmetrically balanced. I have the focal point in the center. Okay, but if I wanted to make this asymmetrical, I can use the rule of thirds to make this asymmetrical. So I'll move my guidelines, and this time, when I make my guidelines, I'm going to divide up my canvas into 3 vertical sections and 3 horizontal sections. And I'm going to place the focal point, which is this heart shape, on one of those intersecting points. I'll kind of rotate it to make it a little bit fun. And then I'll place the text on the other, near the other intersecting point, I should say. And this now is an example of asymmetrical balance. I'll rotate it just a little bit more. And then I think I'll move the website URL closer to the text. So there's still alignment. Notice I'm lining up the website URL with the S and 2 animals. So everything here is still lined up. But I've created the focal point, which is the heart, over here on the rule of thirds intersecting point. So the rule of thirds is when you divide up your design space or your canvas into 3 vertical sections and 3 horizontal sections. And where those intersecting points meet, those are powerful areas. And so it's a good idea to place the focal point there on those intersecting points. And if you're interested, rule of thirds is something that you're going to learn about more as you go forward with your design training. But if you do a little Google search for rule of thirds, you can kind of see how rule of thirds works. The focal point goes on those intersecting points. Right? See the focal point, that guy's bike is near the intersecting points. This guy here is he's near the intersecting points. And so that creates an asymmetrical composition. And now visual hierarchy. Visual hierarchy is the idea that you have one clear focal point and one clear thing that grabs your attention, and then everything else is secondary to that. So on my poster, the focal point is the heart. That is the thing that grabs your attention first, and then the text is secondary to that. Okay, so a good strategy for your design is to keep it simple. You don't want to go overboard with glows and too much imagery. You want to have one nice clear focal point. If something in your design can be taken away, then it probably should. If your design is successful with, 3 images instead of 10 images, then those 3 images are probably what you want to do. Keep your design consistent with, one solid color scheme. But consider looking at it in terms of different colors and with different effects, and seeing it side by side with other ways that it could look. And then consider putting all of your variations onto a contact sheet so that you can view them side by side. So let's go ahead and do that. So I've already saved the JPEG of my previous version of my project. This now is a different version of my project where I used asymmetrical balance and made it monochromatic. So I'm going to save this. First I'll go to File, Save As, and I'll save this as version 2. And I'll save this as a JPEG. And this isn't required, but this is just a good design strategy that you might want to use when you're designing in the real world. And now I'll look at this in a different color. I'll use my hue saturation and I'll make this red instead. And then maybe I'll also throw like a little vignette over this. So to make the vignette, I'm just painting with a large, soft edge paintbrush. And then I'm going to lower the opacity, just like I did on the week 3 animal project. See, just a little vignette there. And now I'm going to go to File, Save As. I'm going to save this as a JPEG, and I'll call this version 3. Now, this is something I do in the real world. I make a contact sheet where I see the 3 versions side by side. So I can go to File, Automate, Contact Sheet, File, Automate, Contact Sheet. And I'll make 3 columns and 1 row. And the files I'm going to use are that one I just did. And then these 2. And now I'm going to click OK. And the cool thing about a contact sheet is it allows you, it just does the work for you. So you just select the files. Hello, Amber. In response to your question about when I have the recordings, it really depends on how fast it takes to upload to YouTube. So it might be uploaded within the hour. It might take 5 hours, but I will be posting them, as always, in the announcement section of the classroom when it's done. And so see there I can view my 3 different versions of my poster side by side. And ta-da! And that is a contact sheet. And again, to make a contact sheet, it's really easy. You go to File, Automate, Contact Sheet. You browse to the files that you made. And then you can choose how many columns and rows that you have. So this time maybe I'll do 1 column and 3 rows. And then you can view your document side by side. Yay. So any questions on anything that I've gone over? I want to talk a little bit about getting a job. I'm also happy to answer any questions about your assignment. Any questions at all? Okay. So I thought I'd share with you guys a little bit of wisdom from a professional graphic designer named Chip Kidd, who is he's a book cover designer. And since we're talking about typography this week, he has some really amazing things to say about typography. And I just want to play for you a little short clip. I think that it's going to be really helpful for you as you generate ideas.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have devoted the past 25 years of my life to designing books. The first day of my graphic design training at Penn State University, the teacher, Lanny Simis, came into the room, and he drew a picture of an apple on the blackboard and wrote the word apple underneath, and he said, "Okay, lesson 1, listen up." And he covered up the picture, and he said, "You either say this," and then he covered up the word, "or you show this. But you don't do this. Because this is treating your audience like a moron." Augustine Burroughs wrote a memoir called This, and it's about his time in rehab. In his 20s, he was a hotshot ad executive, and as Mad Men has told us, a raging alcoholic. He did not think so, however, but his co-workers did an intervention, and they said, "You are going to rehab, or you will be fired and you will die." Now, to me, this was always going to be a typographic solution, what I would call the opposite of Type 101. What does that mean? Usually on the first day of Introduction to Typography, you get the assignment of select a word and make it look like what it says it is. So that's Type 101, right? Very simple stuff. This is going to be the opposite of that. I want this book to look like it's lying to you, desperately and hopelessly, the way an alcoholic would. The answer was the most low-tech thing you can imagine. I set up the type, I printed it out on an Epson printer with water-soluble ink, taped it to the wall, and threw a bucket of water at it. Presto. Then when we went to press, the printer put a spot gloss on the ink, and it really looked like it was running. Not long after it came out, Augustine was waylaid in an airport, and he was hiding out in the bookstore, spying on who was buying his books. And this woman came up to it, and she squinted, and she took it to the register, and she said to the man behind the counter, "This one's ruined." And the guy behind the counter said, "I know, lady, they all came in that way." Now that's a good printing job.
So the moral of that story is be creative with your type, right? You can do something really interesting with typography, right? So think about how you can make your poster nice and interesting. Are we ready to talk about getting a job? I think we are. So getting a job, you guys, that's because that's why you're here. That's why you're spending lots of money in graphic design school learning about graphic design, because you want to have a nice job when you graduate. That's why it's really, really important to not just do assignments that will get you an A, but do assignments that you can use in your portfolio to impress potential employers, right? And as you're designing stuff for your classes, think about, is this project going to be impressive to my potential employer? Now let's talk about when you go to your job interview. What can you do to stand out from the crowd as someone who is capable of making really interesting work? And so I have some tips for what you can bring into interview and what you can do to make yourself stand out amongst the many, many people who are applying for graphic design jobs. Hey you guys, so I want to do a little show and tell with you all today. I have some things that I bring to interviews, and I hope that you guys get these various items made, and so that you can bring them to your interviews and have a lot of success on your job search. So this first thing I'm going to show you is what I call the Leave Behind portfolio. And this is what I get printed at lulu.com, and it has all of my artwork in it, my favorite artwork, let's say that. And this is then something that I can leave with the client or employer that I'm interviewing with. They're really inexpensive. They're between $10 and $20 for each one to get printed. And so you can get a stack of these made, 50 of them, take a look. And then when you go on job interviews, you can leave this with the people that you're interviewing with. And even if they don't hire you, maybe they find someone else whose style is a little bit better fit for their project, they're going to have another project come up. And they're going to remember you because this is going to sit on their shelf. It's way too nice to throw away. And they'll think, oh, that person's style is a much better fit for this project that we're working on. So they're going to give you a call, and this is just a great way to stay in someone's memory by leaving these with the people that you interview with. Now, another thing I get made are these postcards, and I get these made at overnightprints.com. On one side, let's see, it has my contact info, and on the other side it has my artwork. And these are nice and big and colorful, and so they're not going to be stuffed into someone's purse and forgotten about. These might go on someone's fridge or on someone's bulletin board in their office. And then when they have a project come up, they're going to look at your artwork hanging there, and they're going to give you a call. So get a bunch of these made, overnightprints.com. Really inexpensive, and you can get the rounded edges, you can get the shiny on one side, the matte on the other side. And these will be something that you will use to stay in someone's mind when they're hiring for projects. Now, I also have my actual big printed, carrying case portfolio that has all of my artwork mounted on these, I guess you could say, kind of hard mat board or cardstock. I don't print these and make them myself. I get all of my artwork together on a disc or a CD, and then when I'm ready to get it printed, I'll go to Kinko's or Staples, and I just ask them to print it and mount it on black mat board and cut it, so it's all nice and pretty. And all of my pieces together to get printed and mounted only costed like $100. And you have these forever. And as you make art that gets better and better, you can start to throw away or give away the pieces that you don't need anymore and replace them with the pieces that you do like. And yeah, so just carry this in a little carrying case. When you go to your interviews, take out each of these pieces individually and pass them around the table with the people that you're interviewing with so that they can look at them up close and they can pass them and talk about them with their colleagues and everything. And then the next thing is, of course, your resume, and you're going to want to get some nice, clean, good-looking resume paper. Staples, Kinko's, you can get this a lot of places. And this is a resume paper that has texture to it, and it's got some thickness to it, and you want to print out tons of copies of your resume because you're going to go from job interview to job interview. You're going to be interviewed by between 3 and 5 other people. And you want to just be able to whip out your resume, and you want to be able to have lots of resumes available whenever you need to hand it to people. And the last thing, I have these little mugs that I got made at Zazzle.com, and these are like little leave behind presents. So every job interview you go on, you leave a little present with the person that you're interviewing with. And this is going to stay on their desk. This is going to be used for drinking out of, or used as a little container for people's pens. And this is just another way to stay in someone's memory, and then when a project comes up and your style kind of fits with that project, they'll give you a call. You can also get little mouse pads made, and you can give those away during your interview. And periodically during holidays like Halloween, New Year's, you could just send out these little presents to different companies that you've interviewed with. and they're going to have another little present from you and another way to kind of stay in their mind and on their radar when a project comes up that your style fits. Alrighty. Alrighty, you guys. That's all I have for you for our class. Does anyone have any questions? If not, you are free to go. Oh, Emmanuel just asked a great question. The size for the poster is 11 inches by 17 inches, 300 DPI. And then you're shrinking it down for the JPEG, and the JPEG is going to be 500 by 773 pixels, and that's 72 DPI. Any other questions? The JPEG is smaller than the original. A pixel is smaller than an inch. So if there's 300 pixels in an inch, you can visualize how small a pixel is. Have a good night, Amber.